Most of us already know that photosynthesis happens in the chloroplasts of the plant. However, the chloroplast is made up of complex interior structure. The inside of the chloroplast is made up of disc-like objects called thylakoids, each stacked into grana, and the empty fluid space of the chloroplast is called the stroma. There are two steps to photosynthesis. Step 1 is the light-dependent reactions, and the second step is the light-independent reactions. The light-independent reactions are also known as the Calvin cycle. Stage 1 occurs in the thylakoids, while stage 2 occurs in the stroma. The first stage of the light-dependent reaction is when a photon of light hits a protein complex in the thylakoid membrane called photosystem II. This causes the electron to get energized and leave the protein complex. The electron is then picked up by carrier proteins as part of the electron transport chain. Here, the energy from the electron is being used up to pump hydrogen through the electron transport chain. While this is happening, photosystem II replaces the electrons it lost through a process called photolysis. Basically, what this does is it splits a water molecule into two hydrogen ions and oxygen, which is a byproduct of photosynthesis, and a spare electron. Photolysis and the electron transport chain serve to create a concentration gradient of hydrogen across the thylakoid membrane. In the last stage of the electron transport chain, carrier proteins bring an electron to a new protein complex called photosystem I. Here, the electron is then re-energized by pretty much the same way as it was in photosystem II. From here, another carrier protein brings the electron to an enzyme called NADP reductase. This is where NADP plus and a phosphate group join with two charged electrons as a reduction reaction to form NADPH. This is one of the high energy compounds needed for the next step of photosynthesis. This is all happening while the ATP synthase enzymes use the energy from the hydrogen in the lumen to add an inorganic phosphate group to ADP, thus making ATP. This process here is called chemiosmosis. ATP is also the other high-energy compound needed for the second stage of photosynthesis. The light-independent reactions is the second stage of photosynthesis and takes place in the stroma of the chloroplast. The first part of the cycle is where a carbon dioxide molecule is fixed to a compound called RUBP, which consists of mainly a 5-carbon chain. This is done by the help of an enzyme called rubisco that fixes the carbon molecule to the 5-carbon chain, creating an unstable 6-carbon chain. The 6-carbon molecule breaks into two 3-carbon molecules called PGA molecules. This process makes two PGA molecules. NADPH and ATP react with the PGA molecules to create a substance called PGAl. In this process, NADPH gives the PGA molecules one electron, and ATP reacts with the PGA molecules, giving it one of its phosphate groups, creating ADP and PGAl. One of the two PGALs leaves the cycle and joins with another PGAL to create glucose. The other PGAL is then restored back to RUBP through complex reactions called the regeneration phase. The chemical energy from ATP is used to regenerate PGAL to RUBP. However, one PGAL isn't enough to regenerate RUBP. Instead, we need 5 PGALs to regenerate to 3 RUBPs. This is the final step in the light-independent reactions, and by regenerating back to the beginning of this stage, it makes it a cycle. And that is how plants use energy from the sun to photosynthesize and create food for the plant, as well as create oxygen for almost every other living thing.